Alright, I hope you can hear me. Got the engine running on the 550, the 6.0. And right now I'm checking for gas blow by back through the degas bottle. I got the idea off the internet. I didn't dream it up on myself. From a well-known company that sells diesel parts, and I can't remember the name right now, but they had a really good video addressing this, how to check for the difference between a blown head gasket or a bad EGR coolant. So basically I've got a rubber stopper here, tapered. I couldn't get one with a pre-drilled hole, so I drilled a hole through it and I put a tapered barb through the hole. I then attached the hose to the barb, and I've got the hose running into a bottle here. This one's distilled water just because I had it available. You don't have to use distilled water, any water will do. So anyway, we got a semi-steady stream of bubbles coming out. It's been sitting here idling for a while. So the concept is, let it run, get it to operating temperature, which right now it is not. It's not been running long enough. But get it up to operating temperature, and then unplug your turbo. And from what I understand from the video, the turbo will then basically relax, and if the bubbles slow down or stop, then that's going to lead you more toward the EGR cooler being the problem. If the bubbles, if there's no impact at all on the size and frequency of the bubbles, then that's probably going to lead you to think about a head gasket. Of course, increasing the RPMs at the same time might also give you a further indication if the bubbles increase even more after you unplug the turbo. I would imagine that's also an indication that you're getting more gases in the system through the cylinders. So right now I'm just still letting it come up to operating temp, and I'm also going to put my little scan device on here and see what the oil temp and coolant temp are. I'm not sure that's going to be any help because I'm not running it down the road right now. I'm just letting it idle. So it might take a significant amount of idling time before it comes up to temp. But we'll see. I'll be back in a minute. Well, of all the silly things I've got to run into, my reader does not have a engine oil temp data point. I don't know if the sensor's missing, not connected, or for some reason this reader just doesn't show it. It shows the coolant temp, which is currently 183, but I'm not seeing the engine oil temp. Pain in the butt things, I tell you. Alright, this is the current quantity frequency. Well, I got the turbo unplugged, and it appears that there's a decrease in the pressure, but I'm going to let it run for a while longer without it. Then I'm going to plug it back in. I think I'm going to rev it up a little bit too while it's disconnected. See if there's any pressure coming out. So I gave it a good run up, about 1600 RPM, probably about 7 minutes, maybe 10, and had to turn it off for a second, and I came back out, turned it on. Off time is, I don't know, 5 minutes. But since starting and at idle, I'm not getting any bubbles at all. So this is all interesting. I'm not sure where it's leading, but I have a feeling, since I've already ordered the new oil cooler, I'm going to go ahead and replace that, and I'll pop the EGR cooler out and replace it when I do that. When I replace the oil cooler, just for the gee-whiz, just so I can say it's done. But I'm going to have to say I'm not getting major indications that there's anything wrong with the head gaskets. Right now the turbo is plugged in, It's idling about 725, 720. Everything's normal, no codes of any type, and no bubbles. Versus when I first started it, and coolant temp was about 183, and I was getting a fair amount of bubbles on a steady stream until I turned off or unplugged the turbo, and that quieted down a little bit. Didn't totally decrease or eliminate the bubbles, but it definitely decreased it. And then when I plugged it back in, I was receiving you know, a small steady stream again. But after running it at higher RPMs, increasing the coolant temp to about 186, and then letting it go back to idle, no bubbles. I see a little bit of air trapped in the tube that's coming out slowly, but no pressure of any type. Yeah, there's the air right there at the bottom getting ready to pop out. And that's basically the first bubbles that I've seen since letting it go back to idle after higher RPMs. We'll be back. Alright, a little bit more info. I think the reason I'm not seeing any bubbles now while it's idling is that the coolant system is drawing in fluid from the bottle. It may have not equalized yet, because when I started, the distilled water level was about here. Well, now it's around here. So obviously it's pulling some into the system and is drinking it as it needs it. It's definitely not leaking any, and it's not blowing out the exhaust. So don't ask those questions. I've already checked. Everything's good. I think I was just low on coolant. And now the bubbles are starting to slightly reappear. So I think we're at a equalization point now, where it has enough coolant, doesn't draw anymore, and we have a slight amount of bubbles coming out. So at this point, I'm going to once again disconnect the turbo and see what's happening. You can hear the turbo turn off when I disconnect it. And the bubbles have decreased again upon disconnecting the turbo. Alright, well, I've got that settled. I'm going to have to say the head gaskets are not an issue. But we are going to go for that EGR cooler when I replace the oil cooler. We'll be back.